Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I have a couple more autumn theme paper pads I want to use this year. Then I'm going to move on to some Christmas and winter collections. For this video, I'm using the beautiful Autumn Afternoon collection by Honeybee Stamps. I also have the coordinating gem stickers. I love to pick these up because they match perfectly with the pattern papers in the collection. Now I will be using up the entire paper pad, but I decided to record this video just a little differently. I'm going to show all of the papers here real quick. You can see the beautiful designs in this collection. I love the variety of colors and patterns in this collection, and these are all double-sided. I think Honeybee Stamps paper collections are very unique. They don't have a lot of images on them. They're mostly patterns. There's usually just a few papers that have some images. There's a couple of leaves on here, but they're still easy to use and you can create beautiful cards with their collections. I use them all the time. Now I'm going to use just 3 different stamp sets, and these are all by Honeybee Stamps. They're part of their new fall release. This set with all the different leaves and a few sentiments is absolutely gorgeous. It's called Hello Fall. And then I also have a couple of sentiment sets, and these coordinate with some of their sentiment dies, and you'll see me use those on the cards. So let's go ahead and get started with my first set of cards. I'm going to show the assembly of 1 card, but I will be making at least 2 of each design. And I did slow this video down quite a bit. My 6x6 videos are usually sped up 6 times. This video has only been sped up 3 times. I'm using a sketch from Freshly Made Sketches. This is number 457. And if you are interested in any of the sketches I use, I share all of that information on my coordinating blog post. I will have a link provided in the description box, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. I will also add a link on the screen to a video where I talk about how I select card sketches. For this card, I have 2 different pattern papers. I layered everything with some gray cardstock. And for the sentiment, before I adhere it in place, I am going to put some scrap pieces of cardstock on the right and left hand side where it goes off of the other layers. And this is just to keep it all nice and level. Just glue that down with my art glitter glue. And then I'm going to add the sentiment Autumn. This is one of Honeybee Stamps sentiment dies, and I love that it has the 2 different outlines. The very background piece has some fun pierced detail around the outside. And I like that you could use the word by itself, or maybe just one of the background layers, or you can use all 3 like I'm doing here just for some extra detail. So I cut the word Autumn out of some white shimmer paper, and I decided I'm going to pop this up using some thin foam squares. And this is my favorite brand of foam squares. I will have links provided in the description box for all of the products I use in this video. To finish off the card, I'm going to add an assortment of leaves. This is Honeybee Stamps Itty Bitty Leaf Die Set. I believe that's the name of it. And I cut these out of a few different specialty cardstocks by Tonic Studios. I'm going to use my embellishment wand and some liquid adhesive to adhere all of these in place. And that gives the card some extra detail, and it has more of an autumn look with those leaves. I'll also add a few of the gem stickers to sprinkle them around the leaves. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this sketch. Now moving on to the next set of cards. The card sketch is from MFT. This is number 509. One of my favorite pattern papers in the whole collection is this leaf paper. So I really wanted to make sure to feature it on a card. The background paper has a very muted design in this lovely pinkish peach color. I decided to round one of the corners, so I just did the lower right hand corner. And then I'm adding a couple of Love from Lizi peel-offs to the top of this panel. This is the rose gold mirror peel-off color in the pinstripe design. And I'll add a link on the screen if you want more information about where to purchase Love from Lizi peel-off stickers. So I'm going to layer all of this with some cardstock, and I'm going to have that circle hanging off the edge on the left-hand side. And then I also trimmed off the bottom portion of the circle since it's going to be covered up by those two strips. Go ahead and adhere this piece down. I'll put my card front onto a card base, and I can start working on the sentiment. So I used some more of the pattern paper for that lower strip. I cut a little angle on the right hand side, and then I've already gone ahead and stamped out the sentiment. This is by you. I will add a little piece of scrap cardstock where this piece goes off of that circle just to keep everything level. And then I'll add the white sentiment strip right on top. Use some liquid adhesive. I'm using another one of the sentiment die set. This is the word blessed. So the whole sentiment will be blessed by you. And I'm using all three of the die pieces this time. So I have the background. I use some beautiful rose platinum mirror cardstock for that layer. I have that rust paper for the middle layer, and then some more of the white shimmer paper for the word blessed. So this card is going to have a lot of beautiful shine and shimmer. I'll adhere that to the card after I pop it up using some of the thin foam squares. And I love that large S with the little tail. I'm going to have that part hang down right next to the stamp sentiment. And for some extra detail, I cut out some more of the leaves using the same cardstock and then the rose platinum mirror paper. Use my embellishment wand to help pick those up. Prevents having glue all over my fingers if I try to pick them up with my fingers. And I decided to use some Nuvo crystal drops. This is the Morning Dew color. I'm just going to add a few of them around the leaves. And this dries clear. It's just going to add that little bit of gloss detail. So there are my two finished cards using this sketch. This is one of my favorite cards. But do let me know which card is your favorite. Moving on to the next set of cards. This is a sketch from OWH. This is number 219. This leaf pattern paper is another favorite of mine from the whole collection. For the background of the card, I'm using two different pattern papers, both in a lovely green color. The one on the top is a really soft mint green. And then the leaf paper I'm going to feature in that larger rectangle. Layering everything with some green cardstock. And I'll use that same solid green cardstock for the thin strip that goes across the card. I think these colors work really nicely together. I'll put my card front onto a card base. And I am following this sketch fairly closely. I have a stitched circle die cut. I'm going to add a little stamp detail to the background. I'm using a very light gray ink from scrapbook.com, and then I'll also use a couple of the leaf, I guess they're stems or the veins. So it kind of looks like twigs. I'm just going to stamp them randomly on the background. So I have two different images and I just rotate them. And I'll also add some of the berries. I'm doing all of this in that same light gray color. I really just wanted a very subtle background. So I'll adhere this circle die cut onto the scallop die cut. And then before I adhere it to the card, I'll add that scrap piece of cardstock on the upper portion where it goes over that green strip of cardstock. I'll add the sentiment in the center of this circle. I've already gone ahead and stamped and cut this out. This is from that same leaf stamp set. It's Thankful for You. And I popped this up using some of the thin foam squares. In a finishing touch, I cut out a few more of the bitty leaves, itty bitty leaves. I used some iridescent cardstock from Tonic Studios. And there is my finished card. For this sketch, I did end up making a total of 4, just using some different pattern papers for the other 2 cards. This sketch was perfect for featuring some of my favorite pattern papers in the whole collection. Now moving on to the next set of cards. This is a sketch from MFT. It's number 507. I selected 2 of the pattern papers in this lovely gray design. I have that busy sort of wave looking design for the background, and then this galaxy paper I'm going to use for the oval. I layered the oval using some gray cardstock, and after I adhered it to the card, I just flipped that panel over and trimmed off the parts that's hanging off the edge. And for the very background piece, I'm going to layer it with some iridescent cardstock from Tonic Studios. This is the water Sprite. It has this lovely green color to it. And then depending on how the light hits it, you can also see that beautiful rainbow effect. I did cut out the center just to save some of that specialty cardstock, and then I filled in that gap using some scrap cardstock. For the banner on the right hand side, I'm using this pattern paper with this green design. I think the green and the gray go really nicely together. And then I'll add another strip of a gray pattern paper to the center of that banner. Before I adhere it to the card, I will add those cardstock layers on the upper and lower portion where it goes off of the oval. And this is something I never used to do, but then looking at some of my older cards, when I didn't add these little cardstock pieces, I did notice that dent where it goes off of those layers, and I don't like the look. So adding those cardstock layers is something so simple to do, and I always have scraps laying around. For the sentiment, I'm using another die set from Honeybee Stamps. This isn't going to be a fall themed card. Instead, I'm using the hello word. I have the background piece cut out of that same dark gray cardstock. Use some white shimmer paper for the next piece, and then that same iridescent green cardstock for the word hello. And since this word will be going off of the green paper, I'm going to add just that scrap of cardstock on the left hand side first. I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and then adhere it to my card. I love using general sentiments on my cards. Makes them very versatile and you can use them for any occasion. For some finishing touches, I'm going to add a few stitched star die cuts. I have 2 different sizes. I'll put 2 of them in the upper right hand corner and then 1 on the left hand side underneath the sentiment. And then I'll add 1 of the gem stickers in the center of each of those stars. So there is my finished card, and I really like how this one turned out as well. I think it's perfect for a masculine or a feminine card. For the next set of cards, I'm not using a card sketch. Instead, I use this fun die to cut out this reverse scallop opening, and this is from Queen & Company. I'm adding a piece of white shimmer paper behind that opening. Just adhered it using some liquid adhesive, and then I'll attach this panel onto this rust colored cardstock. Since I used a stitched rectangle die to cut out this brick paper, it does warp the very edge of the paper slightly, so I did use some liquid adhesive on the outside edge just to make sure everything was going to adhere. I'm going to put this card front onto a card base, and then I can start working on the images and the sentiments for this card. I'm going to add several of the leaf images, and I use this fun stamp set. There's 2 different stamps for each of the leaves. So you can use the solid color to stamp out the back part of the leaf. Then I'll use some brown ink for the veins and stems of all the leaves. And I have this all set in my mini Misty just to make sure I get a solid impression. Now once I have those all stamped out, I'm going to use the coordinating dies. And there is a die for every single image on that stamp set and also for the sentiments. So that's really fun. So I have them all cut out, and then I also have the word autumn. And this time for the sentiment, I'm just using the word and also that first outline piece. I'm going to attach the leaves. We'll put some in that upper left-hand corner and then the rest in the bottom right-hand corner. I'll use liquid adhesive to adhere all of the leaves in place. I decided not to pop them up at all. I'll adhere the leaves that will be in the background first and then add some adhesive to that leaf that will be in the front. For the word autumn, I am going to pop this one up using those thin foam squares. I make sure to get good coverage so there isn't one side that's going to sag. And then I'll also be adding a stamped sentiment to go with the word autumn. So you could use the word by itself, but it's nice having that extra sentiment to go along with it. The full sentiment is autumn is in the air. So it seemed appropriate to add lots of beautiful fall leaves. I am going to put that scrap piece of cardstock on the left-hand side and then adhere it underneath the word autumn toward the right. And then after I had all of those laid out, I decided to add just a few more of the image pieces. So I have some of the berries and then also an acorn. I think adding the berries really finished off the look. So I will pop up this acorn simply because it's going off of all of these other layers. And then I decided I'm going to add a little bit of shimmer to those berries. So I have a glitter brush from scrapbook.com. And this is the clear color. It just adds that little touch of glitter. I'll put some of the gem stickers around the leaves. Use the orange color, and there is my finished card. And I did make two. And I think this one might be my favorite. Let's see, I can't decide. I really enjoyed all of the cards. Now moving on to the next set of cards. This is a sketch from Mojo Monday. It's number 548. I selected an assortment of browns and yellow pattern papers. I have this fun ombre brown paper for the background. This strip on the left-hand side is a lighter brown paper that has chains of wheat. That's what the pattern looks like. And then I have some yellow pattern paper with little sprinkles all over the background. Instead of layering that wheat paper using some cardstock, I'm going to use some of the brown mirror peel-offs. These are nice when you don't want to add some extra layers. And it also gives a beautiful shine. So I'll attach this panel onto some dark brown cardstock. Then I'll attach this strip. It has a wood grain look on the background. I'll put that on the bottom of the card. Before I attach this yellow pattern paper, I'll add that scrap piece of cardstock, just where it goes off of that other layer. Adhere this to the card. And on this sketch, there is that smaller image box or sentiment box. I'm going to skip that part. And instead, I'm just going to add a few of the image die cuts. So I have two little pieces of wheat. I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, thankful for you. Use my mini MISTI just to make sure I could get a solid impression. I'll put my card front onto a card base. Try to make sure to get it nice and straight. And then I'll attach the two different wheat pieces. I'll put some foam dimension on the left-hand side of the one piece of wheat where it goes off of the other layers, and then use liquid adhesive to adhere the rest. I'll use liquid adhesive for this second piece and just have it sitting next to the one on the left. Then I pulled out some twine. Not sure what brand this is. I've had it forever. It's a cream color and it has some gold threads mixed throughout it. I'm going to do a double layer bow, trim off the ends of the tail, and then I'll use a glue dot and attach it to that wheat stalk that's on the left. Then I'm also going to add a little banner in the upper right hand corner. Just use some more of the brown cardstock. And this banner is a die from Queen & Company. Then I'll finish off the card using some more gem stickers. There is my finished card, and I did make two using this sketch. I grew up in North Dakota and I still remember the golden wheat fields all over the place. So beautiful. So moving on to the next set of cards, I'm not using a card sketch this time. I'm going to create a little scene. I have this fun pattern paper with all the birch trees in the background. I'm going to layer that on some mirror cardstock and then again on some black mirror cardstock. Fill in that gap from the black mirror cardstock with some scrap cardstock that I have sitting on my desk. Put this panel onto the card base. Already gone ahead and stamped out the sentiment. This is when I count my blessings, I count you twice. Isn't that a beautiful sentiment? I'm going to cut fishtails on the ends and then layer this sentiment piece on some more of that black mirror cardstock. I used ATG and also a little bit of liquid adhesive. I just want to make sure this sentiment piece is going to stay in place. Sometimes when you're adhering things to specialty cardstock, you want to make sure to have some extra adhesive. Before I adhere the sentiment, I am going to add a black peel off just across the bottom of the card, and it'll go in the center of that sentiment. So I'll add some liquid adhesive and adhere that sentiment to the lower portion of the card. Now for the trees, I cut out an assortment of leaves. I have some fun colors, but I'd use some non-traditional leaf colors. And I'll randomly add these to all of the trunks. And there's a couple of the leaves I did add some foam dimension just to pop those up. But most of them I'm going to glue directly onto the card. I only used one of the leaf images, but I thought it would be fun to have the 3 different colors. So it did take a little bit longer since I had to stamp all of them individually, but using my Mini Misty made that process go much quicker. Although having just the one die does take a little longer to cut out every single leaf. I think it's worth it though, since this turned out so cute. A couple of the leaves, I'm going to have them go off the edge, so I just use my scissors and trim that, and then they'll go flush to that very edge of the card. And finishing touch, I'm just going to add a few of the gem stickers around the sentiment. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Now moving on to the next set of cards, I'm using a card sketch from Mojo Monday. This is number 543. I pulled out some more of the brown and yellow pattern papers and also some of the leftover leaf paper. I'll adhere that wood grain pattern on the left hand side and then that 1-inch strip of the yellow pattern paper to the right. And I am going to put a Love from Lizi brown mirror peel off between those 2 layers. And I only have to use small pieces since most of it's going to be covered up. It's always nice when you can use up some of those small peel off scraps. Now for this leaf paper, I didn't have a long enough strip to go all the way across the card. But this is still going to work since most of it will be covered up. I cut out that brown cardstock layer and then adhered the leaf pattern paper onto it. That way I could make sure I had it nice and straight. I'll adhere this brown lattice paper first and then this strip that goes across the card. So it does look a little odd with all of that brown cardstock showing, but once I add the circle die cut, it's going to be covered up. I used some more of the white shimmer paper for this stitched circle die cut. I'll adhere that to the scallop circle die cut. And since everything is basically at the same layer, I didn't have to add any extra cardstock. I'm going to stamp this sentiment directly onto that circle. So I have my Mini Misty using another of the wheat stock. I'm going to have that on the right side. Inked up that sentiment 2 times to make sure it was nice and bold. And then I'll glue the wheat to the right hand side. Then I decided I'm going to add some of that twine that has the gold threading. I'm going to put it around the top of the card. Wrap it around twice. I put some ATG tape on the back to hold it in place. And then I'll also add some score tape to the ends just to make sure it's not going to slip off later. Put some ATG on the back, and then on the very top portion I'll also add some liquid adhesive just to make sure the card front isn't going to pull away from the card base. The twine in the background does add a little bit of dimension. I'm going to tie a bow on the left hand side. I'll trim off the ends. I tend to keep my bows fairly small on my cards. And then I decided the wheat needed a little bit of sparkle. So I'm using some Nuvo glitter drops. I believe this is the yellow bird color. And I'm adding it just to the yellow portion of the wheat. I'll also add some Nuvo Dream Drops. This is a gold color, and I'm going to sprinkle those around the sentiment and the image. And there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. I just had to alternate the background pieces since I'm running out of full pieces of paper at this point. For my next set of cards, I wanted to make sure to use the rest of that brick paper. So this is the part that was cut out from a previous card. Don't want that to go to waste. I'm going to use some of the Rose Platinum Specialty paper, and then I have some white shimmer paper. Cut that out using a stitched rectangle die. I did save some of that rose paper again, so I have that scrap piece of cardstock going in the center, and then I'll layer that piece using some of the rust colored cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base. And then I'll attach this die cut piece in the center. So it looks like you're looking through a window at a brick wall. I'll add just one of the leaf images to the center of that brick. Glue that down using some liquid adhesive. And then for the sentiment, I'm using the word autumn, and I'm not going to layer it this time. I have it cut out of some beautiful glitter paper. So for the most part, this is a fairly flat card. I'm going to adhere that underneath the leaf image. I will add a stamp sentiment to the card, put it directly underneath the word autumn. And since I will be stamping directly onto my card, I am going to use my Mini Misty. I don't want to mess that up. So the rest of the sentiment is here. So the full sentiment will be autumn is here. I'm trying to make sure to get it nice and straight. Then I realized I didn't have my card all the way flush to the right inside the Misty. So I had to reposition that stamp before I inked it up. Using some brown ink from scrapbook.com. And then finishing touch, this is a very simple card. I'm using the white gem stickers. I'm going to put a couple of them underneath the sentiment and then a few of them around the image. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Overall, a fairly simple design, but I think all those extra layers really add some lovely detail. Generally in my 6x6 videos, you can watch as all the papers disappear. So I thought I would show the scraps that I currently have left over. I'm going to use a die from Pretty Pink Posh. This is one of their stacked edges, set number 1. And it's this beautiful scallop border die. I have an assortment of pieces already cut out using all of the beautiful pattern papers. Then I have a piece of white cardstock. This is 4 by 5 1/4, and I covered the entire piece with some ATG tape. Now I'm going to adhere all of these die cut pieces. Always try to make sure to get that first one straight, otherwise they're all going to be crooked. And then we just start stacking them on top of each other. This is a great way to use up your scraps. You can feature an assortment of beautiful pattern papers all together. I'm trying to rotate the colors and designs. Now for that very top, I could trim that down, But instead I'm going to add some liquid adhesive on those little tiny parts of the cardstock still showing and adhere one more of the die cuts. So I want to make sure that glue is holding before I trim any of these pieces off. So I just flipped over the whole panel and then I'll trim all those overhang pieces against the cardstock. So now I end up with this lovely background pattern. I'm going to layer that onto some gray cardstock and then I'll put that piece onto my card base. So I will still have some of the white card base showing. It's 1/8 of an inch. And if I didn't mention it earlier, most of my cardstock layers are an additional 1/8 of an inch to the measurements that are listed on the sketch. Now using that same gray cardstock, I cut out this tag, this fun stitch detail all around it. This is also from Pretty Pink Posh. And I'm adding a bow. This is some cream wrinkle ribbon from May Arts. I've had it for years, so I don't think it's available any longer. I like it because it can flatten easily and it doesn't add a lot of extra bulk. I'll attach it to the card using a glue dot. And for the sentiment, I'm using the word blessed. I have some white shimmer paper for the word and then using some more of that iridescent water Sprite cardstock from Tonic Studio for that outline piece. Popped it up using some of the thin foam squares. And then I'm adding the sentiment by you. I cut the right hand side at an angle and adhered it underneath the sentiment. And then for a finishing touch, I'm adding a few of the itty bitty leaves, and I cut these out using some of the pattern paper. Put a couple of them underneath the sentiment and then one above the sentiment. I'll also add a few of the gem stickers, just sprinkling them around the sentiment, and then some in the upper left-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I was able to make 3 using all those leftover scraps. I love using Pretty Pink Posh's stacked edge dies. They have 2 different sets with different designs. They're perfect for finishing off a paper pad. So here is all of the leftover pattern paper scraps. Not a whole lot. I probably could have made at least one more card, but I decided to call it done. In addition to the paper pad, I also used 8 sheets of 8.5 by 11 and 7 sheets of 12 by 12 solid colored cardstock. A total of 23 cards were made using Honeybee Stamps Autumn Afternoon 6 by 6 paper pad. This collection is absolutely gorgeous. I loved using the leaf and sentiment dies along with it. I will have links provided in the description box if you are interested in any of the products I used in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.